A new game is about to release. You've heard about it, you've hyped over it, but you're not sure you're ready to buy it. The first thing most of you will do is look at the reviews. Maybe you go onto YouTube, but you probably just type game plus review into Google and start there. And you get IGN or Kotaku, Polygon, GameSpot, PC Gamer. You could be the type who goes straight to Metacritic or OpenCritic so you can get a feeling for what all the respectable reviewers think. Unfortunately, these review sites are flawed. They're less useful than they should be, and to help me explain, I've got someone who's spent a lot of time thinking about it.
I've got a confession. I visit IGN and Polygon nearly every day. They provide a great way to kill time while waiting for a render. Hi, I'm Brody, or Rad, or Racrox, or as M likes to call me, Rayquois, and while I go to these sites to keep tabs on the ever-evolving gaming world around me, I wish I had better options because they have stark issues, and they aren't the only ones that do. These websites skirt the fine line between being a news site and a critic site, and sometimes they don't bother being either. And while they provide a service that I myself partake in every day, they are not providing it to the best of their ability.
So let's talk about the problem with game review sites.
Now, I can't speak for everyone, or even am really, but when I go looking for a review, as rare as that is, I don't look for a syndication. I look for people. Reviewers, critics, whatever you want to call them, their value is determined by the stock you put into them. So when I do go out and look, I don't just Google a name and see what comes up. I have a list of people I'm going to check to see if they said anything about the game. Some of these people I go to because their views and opinions tend to line up with mine, so if they say a game is worth my time, I can safely operate under the assumption that it will be. And some of those people have directly conflicting viewpoints to my own, and I go to them because hearing the other side of the coin is always a good thing. Echo chambers benefit nobody. I'm not going to put much stock in a turn-based RPG fan bashing a first-person shooter, but I am going to take into account when that person finds an FPS they love, because there's a damn good chance it means the game was so phenomenal it transcended someone's preferences. But the important thing about anyone I choose to listen to is that I know them, or rather in terms of what that typically means when looking for opinions online, I've watched or read enough of their content that I have a good grasp on what they bring to the table and how they can help inform me specifically. And that's exactly what gaming news syndications don't do. I could go to IGN right now, pull any review of a game, and chances are I've never heard of the person behind the keyboard that wrote it. The article will say their name, but a reviewer needs to be more than a name on an article. They need to be a presence. One that the public, or more importantly, you can trust. That's where YouTube comes in handy. You can go to a critic's channel, watch a couple videos, and get a solid feel of how valuable they're going to be to you. Now, you can try to follow a specific reviewer on IGN, but that takes considerably more effort due to the smorgasbord of articles they put up and the fact that the reviewer isn't going to be assigned to every game that passes through. Not that that's unexpected given the amount of games that do pass through the site, but knowing it's a problem doesn't stop it from being a problem. I would know, because I followed and continue to follow the closest people any of those sites got to being real personalities: Greg Miller and Colin Moriarty. When I first started checking IGN regularly way back when, I don't even remember what I was looking for, unless we go back even further and count looking up cheat codes for Spyro 3. That's me sneaking in a Spyro reference, and Em probably hates that I did that. No, so no one tell him I did that. But anyway, I found myself reading a lot of reviews for PlayStation games that were coming out at the time, and one review in particular got my attention. Greg Miller's review for Uncharted 3, in which he gave it a perfect 10 across the board, back when IGN had categories in their reviews. He started it with the line, "Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception is the reason I play video games," and followed up with a read that gripped me enough to look at his name and give a shit who he was, landing on the fact that a score of 10 out of 10 is reserved for a masterpiece, but that it not need be flawless. And that spoke to me. Now, I'm not here to discuss what a review score means, but what I am saying is before I even knew about Greg's work on his PlayStation podcast Beyond or began watching his comedy news show Up at Noon, he was able to get me to go to the top of that Uncharted 3 review and Google his name to see what else he's done, and continue to do so for months and now years after I read the review. And what that entailed was a personal YouTube channel where he put videos like him singing a cover of Filter's Take My Picture with best friend Colin Moriarty playing guitar beside him, and doing reviews for Oreo cookie flavors. Now, this was years before Greg and Colin split off from IGN to create their own network, and it might sound like these personal videos had nothing to do with their reviews, but it did. His Uncharted 3 review was great and put him on my radar, but it was all that extra, seemingly useless content that told me he knew how to have fun. And that is what makes him my most trusted gaming critic of all time. Scratch that. My most trusted internet personality of all time. So when I'm sitting here on the fence debating whether to get the new God of War because it's getting rave reviews across the board, but I've never been into the series one bit, and Greg Miller spends just 4 minutes talking about how it's his game of the year despite he himself myself never really liking Kratos, you can bet your ass I'm headed out the door to pick that game up as soon as I can. So why go on this huge tangent about how Greg Miller got my attention when he did so through a written article on IGN with his name at the top? Surely that disproves my entire point that just being in the name at the top matters. Well, it doesn't. Because Greg is an anomaly, and while IGN and other sites have tried to elevate other staff to the level of Greg, they've largely failed because simply putting someone on a podcast like Beyond or Unlocked or whatever is a half measure. The closest examples to Greg and Colin I can think of are the McElroy brothers from Polygon, but funny enough, they just left to focus on their personal projects. And besides, Justin and Griffin haven't written reviews for Polygon in over a year and almost 2 years respectively. Now they produce some fantastic and hilarious content, some for Polygon and most not, and while I will always look at Griffin as a fantastic example of a dungeon master, I'm not looking for him to tell me if I should play Uncharted 4 or not, just as I wouldn't ask Greg for his advice on how to best structure a boss encounter on a moving train while a party member's hanging off the side with a rope and the train's about to head into a tunnel. Actually, that might be fun. Greg, if you ever watch this, hit me up and let's kill some gerblins. You too, Griffin. You know I'd be great for a live show. Hit me up. Now, before I cap off this point of knowing who's behind the screen mattering when someone is putting stock in a review or otherwise, Em had down here in our brainstorming notes that Polygon's Ben Kuchera is a decent example of being enough of a personality to know what you're getting into when you read an article he's written. Most likely an opinion article, that is. And while certainly on the level of someone like Ryan McCaffrey or Damon Hatfield, he's not someone I like to listen to, conflicting viewpoints or otherwise, and he certainly wasn't given the award of Trending Gamer at the 2015 VGAs, or elected one of Forbes 30 Under 30 in 2017. So yeah, these sites have tried to embrace the integral personality aspect necessary for a reviewer to put stock in a review, but unless those personalities went out of their way outside of the network they're working for, it hasn't worked, and I'd say credit where credit is due for those sites trying, but they aren't trying hard enough. These sites are going to continue to have random names at the tops of pages writing reviews for them, and if they can change that fact down the line, good on them, but until then, there are steps you can take to enhance your experience on these sites despite this shortcoming. Yes, it's easier to find personalities on YouTube because it's inherently how content creation here works, but that doesn't mean you can't find your Greg Miller on one of these sites. If you're serious about wanting to find someone on one of these networks to put some stock into, don't just skip to the number at the end or even the final paragraph. Read the reviews and just maybe you'll find something in someone that I found in Greg Miller when I googled his name. And hey, if you don't, you got someone's take at least, and really, isn't that what you're getting right now?
Of course, the argument that tends to be made by defenders of the industry is that these sites survive exclusively on ads. Ads which aren't served only on quality articles and which aren't seen if there's no article at all. See, this video you're watching right now might have had an ad on it. If it did, you might have clicked it and we would have gotten paid for that. That doesn't mean this video is automatically high quality, just that it exists. And if it didn't exist, if this video was never made, that ad isn't paying us, but it's still paying someone. Therefore, it is argued these sites should be producing as much content as possible. In fact, if these sites weren't making money on producing these articles as quickly, cheaply, and as often as possible, they wouldn't. See, it's the market that decided that this kind of content is acceptable. That's hard to argue against. People clearly want to read the latest article about Logan Paul, or those articles wouldn't be so popular. Gamers are clearly not only interested in reviews of the newest games or news about the latest gaming mergers, but they also want wider news delivered to them on the same platform. It's laziness or ease of use, pandering or personalizing for the demographic. And yet the gamers themselves become more and more selective, more niche. This isn't even something hard to argue as the less mainstream subreddits become larger, more laser-focused YouTubers become more popular, and super in-depth and less frequently updated gaming news sites become more steadily go-to. The best gaming-related website today is almost inarguably Glixel, an off-brand of Rolling Stone. Maybe it's a case of the parent harming the child. Polygon was started because it was an obvious addition to Vox Media's sports-centric audience. And so it gets all things sports guys wouldn't want to look at. Kotaku was run by the now infamous Gawker Media of leaked sex tape fame. PC Gamer is just another offshoot of Future, who runs over 50 different brands and falls victim to regular corporate expectation. It's hardly surprising that none of these really provide the kind of high-quality, gaming-centric coverage we would want, because none of them are gaming-centric in the first place. Ironically, it is the fact that Glixel isn't a spun-off brand that allows it to be so much better. While it certainly isn't perfect, its lead editor is a founder of Kotaku and Polygon, after all, it allows for its writers to attempt to to embody that individualism that Rackrocks was looking for by not forcing new articles every hour and seeing a lot of cross-pollination between Rolling Stone and Glixel. Smaller, more focused, less timeline-sensitive work has always been better. We know this. It's not as profitable, or CNN and Fox News wouldn't exist and we'd still be reading the newspapers. However, for our own culture, I can't help but say that maybe a slightly emptier website is what I'm looking for.
Now, M hit the nail on the head for exactly why there's too many articles for it to rationally be feasible to wade through one of these larger sites looking for that golden nugget. And he's correct. It's the readership clicking on all those repetitive Logan Paul articles that, despite seemingly abhorring the man, link to his channel and usually his most notorious video every time. It's the readership clicking on a video that talks about that moment in Infinity War, stopping and wondering if they really won't believe what happened next when blah 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 blah. But let's talk about how they get those clicks. People are naturally inquisitive, so when they see an article with a title that says it talks about explaining that moment, even if they've seen the piece of media in question or not, or even if they know perfectly well how that moment is explained, they're still going to want to click on that article just to see exactly which moment it is they're talking about. Now, you could argue these sites title things that way to avoid spoilers, but there's a big difference between an article titled "Explaining a Pivotal Moment in The Last Jedi" versus "WTF was up with that scene." So I don't put the blame on the readership, at least not all of it or even most of it, because these sites purposefully use wording that doesn't just entice in a fair manner, but practically screams at readers, "Click me or you won't get the satisfaction of scratching that itch." And even when these sites do keep the articles grounded in the gaming world, they still manage to come up with non-news, like this article on IGN saying, "God of War won't have any microtransactions." Now, the comments below might say that it's a sad day when a single-player game has to announce that it won't have microtransactions, and furthermore that fact is newsworthy, but that's just it. It's not a sad day because it isn't newsworthy and they didn't have to announce it at all. It's an entire article on a 3-word tweet the director made in response to someone on Twitter. That's not news, it's IGN exaggerating the importance of something that was already given as much presence as befitted it. A tweet from the director. And lastly, I would go off on some tangent about sponsored content, paid articles, and how when I saw an Amazon-sponsored article on IGN advertising the best snack deals for a certain day back in April, I stopped and thought, wow, they really don't give a shit, do they? But I've gone on long enough, so I'll say if you need more snarky jabs about the subject, do yourself a favor and watch the final stretch of South Park Season 19. I can't imagine anyone putting a bow on the topic as eloquently as they did.
Now, one of the things that you might take away from this so far is that all of these are old media. They are magazines that have existed in some cases for 30 years and transitioned into blogs on the internet. They are owned by massive media corporations and generally are a calculated vertical to appeal to similar demographics. Easily one of the driest ways to describe something as visceral as gaming. This isn't to say that new media doesn't experience the same issues, but in general, the very nature of mediums like YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and Instagram give more insight into the person behind the words. When you watch this video, you hear my voice. You can very easily find all of my game reviews or look for controversial videos and listen to my words to know who I am. Not all new media does this, and you see a lot of these older companies trying to follow the clickbaity, mass-produced content styles they developed on their websites. IGN, for example, has put out 15 new videos today. 7 of those are under a minute. Essentially, grab a tweet or simply point back to their own website, show it on screen with some music, and then video is over. It's really no wonder why only 0.1% of their subscribers watch their average video. But there's a lot of really good content out there as well. At this point, for me, personally, when a game comes out that I'm interested in, I'm going to catch a Twitch stream and watch a YouTube reviewer. Perhaps this is what's causing review sites to clamor so desperately for our attention. Written reviews certainly have their value, but how do you compete with visuals and sound for building a rapport with the reviewer? When you watch me, you know you're hearing my unfiltered words, that they aren't approved by committee, and that's a major value to a consumer and a major hurdle to the established review sites. Who is your favorite reviewer? Does it matter what site they work for? Is there a site you go to before any other? And if so, how does it compare to what we think a game review site should be? I'd love to know. And if they're really super, I'd like to check them out myself. I really want to thank Rackrocks for jumping in and providing his unique perspective here.
Well, thank you, M, for providing me the opportunity to speak about a subject I've taken issue with for, at this point, years. I tend to swing a more positive light over on my own channel, so it was nice to let some harsher criticisms fly. I don't have a video that directly ties to this topic to plug, but if you're interested in my take on another issue in the gaming realm, you might want to check out my video on Ubisoft and how, despite what you may think, they're a fantastic example of a big publisher and a positive example for other companies of their ilk. I love talking about these kinds of things, so be sure to look out for more of that down the line.
If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and share, and if you didn't, then don't do either of those, but if you did, you can watch another video in the corner right now, and as always, we'll see you on the next one.